Cool. So I'm excited to follow the panel that we just had with this panel that goes deeper into what challenges we have with building a decentralized stack, what that means, and addressing some of the things that came up in the last one around how can we be more resilient through thinking about decentralized infrastructures in a systemic way, from the protocol level to the hardware level to building the communities that are using and maintaining and contributing to these tools. So if each of you could share your name and what you're working on and what part of the decentralized stack you would consider that to be, and then we'll dig in a bit to what that means.
So thank you. I'm Calle. First and foremost, I'm a Bitcoin developer. As a Bitcoiner, it's interesting to listen to these conversations because in the Bitcoin space, we've been hammering down on decentralization since 16 years as our primary objective, and have done many painful decisions to keep Bitcoin as decentralized as possible. I work on Cashu, which is a Chaumian eCash system, basically a incredibly private way of exchanging value, which can be hosted by anyone. So we're targeting communities, websites, services. So there are many, many different cash mints that people run. And I also work on Bitchat, which is a offline decentralized mesh-based messenger that works when the internet goes down, has basic zero infrastructure. That means your phone is the infrastructure, and it's been downloaded by millions of people in the world. Many political events have been have used Bitchat in the past year, so I'm happy to join the panel. Thank you.
I'm Liz from Least Authority. We work in different areas within the decentralized space. When it comes to the stack, we've worked on distributed storage, secure distributed storage, and maintaining privacy within that type of storage. And then also working on file transfer, looking at it also from the security perspective and making sure it's private from the sense of not using identifying information in order to allow file transfer and also file storage. And so from the angle of privacy, of not even requiring certain personal information in order to perform these tasks. And so that's what we've been focusing on. We also help out on the security side with other projects by doing audits and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of this space, with the stack, it's been storage and file transfer.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Bradley. My academic background is in cognitive science, but I am currently working as the AI node manager here in Berlin for the Foresight Institute. Foresight is a 40-year-old SF-based nonprofit that provides resources. Originally, that was grants. Now it's grants, co-working, residency space, fellowships, and compute. And we just opened up a new node physical location here in Berlin in April. I think it's enough for now, actually. And I'm the node manager. I think I mentioned that.
Hi, my name's Adam. I have a past involving building the infrastructure of the internet from the 90s onwards. And I have an interest in the liminal boundary between the human and the machine and technology and media itself and its impact. Lately, I founded the Australian chapter of the Internet Society in the 90s and have continued the political and social side of my interest through establishing a community network in Europe, one of the first, and joining the Internet Society's community network infrastructure special interest group. I'm interested in the way that the infrastructure that we build and have around us has an impact on our minds and cultures.
Awesome. So I'm super inspired by the different angle that all of you are bringing to solving this problem. So we all know that it can be challenging and a labor of love and an expression of values to use open source software. So anyone that was interacting with our speaker management system and having some challenges there, for example, I guess it's a sacrifice that we make in a certain way to have things be more challenging or tricky because it's also very important to, to support these open source efforts and to have privacy embedded by design in ways that we communicate with each other in the space. So I'm curious to hear from each of you guys what does it mean to have the kind of the decentralized version of the area that you are working in? So why self-sovereign and decentralized compute? Why peer-to-peer mesh networking? Et cetera? Why for storage, for Bitcoin protocols, like what is the reason that it is so important to have these infrastructural designs and to adhere to these values in your work and in general in comparison to the centralized options.
Maybe I want to continue the thought that Kyle just offered in the previous panel, the guy from Brave, who said that decentralization in and itself is not a goal per se. And I tend to agree with that because decentralization itself has no ethical component to it. The underlying reasons why decentralization matters is, and this is something that we can learn from the original ideas of Bitcoin, is that if something is decentralized, then it means, one, it cannot be turned off. Oh, someone is hacking the light system. Decentralization means it cannot be turned off by any individual. That means it's resilient. We see this from the Tor network. The establishment doesn't like Tor, but it's still open. Or torrents. The establishment doesn't like torrents. They're fighting against it for 20 years, and it's still running great. Everyone should use it. And the same is true for Bitcoin, and this touches on the economic side of things. Bitcoin is a system that shakes the power of the economic empire, and the same is true for communication, and I think communication is almost the hardest nut to crack here because we've seen many attempts at trying to build something that is resilient and cannot fail. It's surprisingly hard because the other examples that I just gave work really well. So for communication, and like I'm now giving the example of BitChat, it's the biggest issue for communication is the hardware infrastructure because we barely own like a tiny part of the infrastructure in your pocket, which is your phone. That's the thing that you own, and everything above it, like the meme with the stacking everything on top, is not in your control. So that means surveillance is part of it, and it can be rugged under your ass, and you cannot use it for political reform or uprisings or demonstration. So there's many risks associated with that, and I think those are kind of the goals that we're working towards. For BitChat specifically, it means because you're limited to the things that you own, that the range is limited, right? So there's like the lemma is the range is limited because you don't own the infrastructure of the internet above it. So we're trying to kind of build that from the ground up. But I know that there's also people trying to build it from the top down. And hopefully we'll kind of reach each other and limit, and be able to communicate through the entire stack. But I think we're still far away from that.
There are other alternatives, of course, as well. You could build from the middle out. Just suspend physics.
I can give one example. So Foresight is not trying to build a hyperscaler of what we're building here, but we're trying to build a research-grade cluster. And I think this is one example where it's very different from what you have in your hand. We're not a big nonprofit. Our portfolio is like $5 million a year that we give out in grants. About 3.4 of that is to secure AI. But nonetheless, we're setting up something here in Berlin and in SF as well that could run simultaneously for multiple research labs without needing queuing. So, and we're hoping to see that, and we're hoping that we're not just the only, let's say, like small nonprofit or similar organization that starts to build out clusters like this. We're hoping that many realize, oh, okay, maybe I can't compete, but if we come together, we can still provide something at like a hyper-local level that is much more than someone could ever do at home. So it's just one version of this. I don't think it's the answer, but this is the way that we're thinking about it.
Yeah, and to the decentralization question of this idea, for us it's been for security by design and looking at how to make things secure. But I mean, the word security, when you think about it, it needs to be framed within what are your goals for the security and who is trying to control what from who else. And in the case of like decentralization, you really want to empower these end users. So talking about what you have in control in your pocket versus the other things that you don't have control of, how can you enable through protocol development, through use of cryptography, the users to be able to control what's happening with their data even when they don't control the other parts of the system. So, and this is the kind of security angle that we come from. It's because it's relative to user control, which is necessary for freedom, and you need to have this also to maintain your privacy, because no one can really care for your privacy better than yourself. And you cannot have true privacy without that autonomy of control over your own data. And so this all is related. So the decentralization part comes too. If every endpoint, every end user can control their own data, you need to have it decentralized. Otherwise, somebody else is in control of some point. And even when you work on infrastructure that has set points of centralization, how can you bring it back down to that end user control so that like I said, for privacy and security purposes?
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, if I might, Liz. I think it's very important for us all to have a healthy interest in the infrastructure around us. And one of my pet interests is the way that the infrastructure watches and uses us. And I'm interested also in central decentralized services and the internet, as particularly in my case, I have a hobby with the DNS system and how it can be used, abused, broken apart, and democratized. So I think the interplay between, someone mentioned that they couldn't get a good definition sometimes of decentralized. I think it's a spectrum of existence, and there's no real purity in this thing. But the important thing is to keep our eyes open on the impact that it has on us.
Definitely. So to that point, I think, in this space, we love to talk about the trilemma. And I think here we have an interesting trilemma between, security, accessibility, and my brain just blanked on what the other one was. Decentralization, exactly. So within this trilemma, then I feel like, it so often has this feeling of like you have to pick two of those, what would you view as either, a counterpoint against that or ways that expresses in your area of work?
I can take that. So I think, I believe in the trilemma, and there's theoretical underpinnings for it. But we have the freedom to choose more than one system. That is the good part, the good message here, because you don't have to rely on only one thing for the entire trilemma. You can build in layers. So I'll make an example. Bitcoin is extremely decentralized, but as I said in the beginning, we made some painful decisions to keep it decentralized, meaning it's extremely slow. It only carries like 1 megabyte of data or a few megabytes of data per block per 10 minutes. And that is a deliberate choice to ensure decentralization, because that means that everyone in the world with a Raspberry Pi can run a Bitcoin node. And that is kind of something to optimize for, and you suffer in terms of, for example, UX. And but the nice thing is that we can build on top of Bitcoin. Cashu is a protocol that builds on top of Bitcoin. Lightning is a protocol that does it, where you sometimes give away another dimension of that trilemma, but you get insane speed, transaction speed, privacy, and so on top of it. So I think we can be smart about the stack that we built, and we don't have to have all properties of everything in every single layer.
Yeah, and to add that the answer might be that there are all multiple stack choices. You can choose the whole stack. You can choose different things at the different layers, because this idea that everything is 100% decentralized is not a good way to think of it either, that you have to make these trade-offs and you have to determine for yourself where you want to make certain trade-offs. So at that moment in time, is your threat model one that you can trade off maybe some security or privacy elements for some convenience or something, but perhaps in other things that you do, you would rather do it slower and harder because you want the security assurances and stuff. So, and I think that this is where, again, the choice comes in, that if we have multiple stacks, multiple options at the layers, and we communicate well to users as to what their choices are, then, they can determine for themselves at what points do they really require decentralization or privacy or, the answers to this trilemma.
And I really like the point that you made about communicating with users, because I think to that point of the accessibility part really is like a red zone of the trilemma triangle when there is not that that communication, but then that also requires, a contributor infrastructure of people that have the time to make this documentation, to communicate with community, and to be really clear. So I think, in terms of what are we continuing to design for, this is one that's very dear to me, and I'm really happy that you mentioned it.
Yeah, and on the counter side, also, how do we hold accountable those who are maybe telling users things that aren't true? Or, like for marketing purposes, for whatever. I mean, that's where the incentives sometimes are misaligned in the space, but importantly, we have to be able to have those, even the talk before, the difficult discussions, to have the conversations openly and hold people accountable about what are we telling users and what are they actually getting.
I'll get to Adam in just a minute, but that reminded me of a conversation I had with someone recently where they were saying, coming from the comms team, we want to reach out to community in a way that is simple and enough to make sense and get people galvanized, to be using this tooling and to engage. But then at what point is distilling that, starting to become not as accurate, and on what layer of the stack does that lack of accuracy even show? Is it someone that's really digging into the code base, or to someone that's using it as an end user and it's not the the outcome or downstream effect that they expected? So yeah, definitely a challenge. And Adam?
Yeah, I think my takeaway or pickup from this is also, I think it's to do with simplicity. And I think there is a maximum layer of cards that we can stack in our edifice that is healthy for humanity, I think, regardless of the rest of the structure. And we should be aware of that and look at the impacts these structures have on us. Yeah.
There's a term in cognitive science called affordances, which is basically what is the easiest action for a user to do. And I think that
Frictionless sword.
the frictionless sword.
Frictionless.
Yes, frictionless. But exactly, and I think one thing that I'm seeing a lot is we're building a protocol, and then we're saying, oh yeah, we're going to build some really nice UX on top of it. But I would actually say we should start the other way around. And again, I'm not a technical person, but I do believe that with the tools that we have nowadays, especially with generative AI, we have a lot more ability to say, you know what, I'm not just going to push something out there that works well for me. I actually can just run this through Opus 4.8 or Fable if it comes back online and design something on top of it, a harness on top of it that people can actually use. I also think that we're going to get very close to, in the future, this is just speculation, we're all going to have our own kind of UX that is living on whatever devices we use, and then the protocols, the apps, whatever it is going to kind of fit in as an API or whatever it is underneath that. And so I think we should start really spending a lot more time, not just saying, oh yeah, the comms team will do it, but from the ground up, I would love to see more people. And I'm saying because I'm every day I'm seeing researchers work on stuff and build stuff, and I'm seeing software, and I'm looking at it over their shoulders, and they're trying to show me, and they're saying, this is so exciting, Bradley, this is going to change the world, it's an open source Palantir, everyone's going to use it. This just happened to me. And I'm looking at the, yes, exactly, and I'm looking at the UX, and I'm like, no.
There's a pink and fluffy Palantir.
I would love to see it, yeah. So that's just, I'd love to see more of that.
That's a good point, yeah. We can't expect adoption of tools. We can't expect users to actually have choices without being fully knowledgeable of what their choices are. And if we're not building that from the ground up, yeah.
And I want to suggest there's one really, really simple way to make sure that happens. Whatever you're building, get it in front of people that are non-technical. Get it in front of people that don't know your industry and see what happens. I think so many builders do not do that until years in and thousands of coding hours into whatever they're building. They haven't actually got it in front of people.
Yeah, and be insecure about it. Be insecure about your own assumptions, because that is a danger once you start going down that rabbit hole.
I want to contribute maybe a slightly contrarian view on that, although I largely agree with what you said. I'm a developer. I've been writing code for almost 30 years at this point, and I barely have written a line of code in the last year or so. And everyone knows why. It's because of AI. So AI has completely changed the way we develop software. We can do it faster. We can do it with more precision. We can do things that we weren't able to do as developers. It also has a secondary effect for users themselves, which is it has a potential to solve one of the biggest UX struggles that we had so far, because things that were complicated before are now a simple prompt away. And this is does not only apply for writing software, but also for using software. So you can tell your agent to set up a GPG key for you, set up your mail client, and upload your key and share it with everyone you need with a single sentence. And that is something that would have required maybe you to study the whole thing for a week before, which you don't need to do anymore. So from the user's perspective, things are changing rapidly as well. I think we don't feel it as much right now. And I like to top it off even more contrarian, I think even UI itself is disappearing. So the two-dimensional surface that we interacted with for many years is probably going away and will be replaced with something much more verbal, more human. And that might surprise us in the next coming years, where things that we thought were impossible from the user's perspective will become suddenly a lot more tangible.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of over this singularity theme of blending with our environment and the body dissolving. It just doesn't sound that appealing to me. It's taken to extreme.
I'm referring to simple chat interfaces. We have them today already, so you don't need to wait.
One thought I have, and this is more of a question because I haven't looked into this, but with the AI EU Act, I'm sure some of you know more, isn't it true that when it comes to wearables, which OpenAI is pushing really strong towards, and a couple of the companies as well, that every single user has the right to have access to the stream of their data precisely as OpenAI or any one of the wearable providers would be getting it? I think this was something that I read like a year ago about this act that's coming into effect in September this year, like in a month or two. I'm hoping someone here tells me more about this. We can tell the audience.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that particular bit of legislation. I just think they're trying to legislate way out of a scale that's possible or practical to understand, let alone enforce. It just sounds out of belief, really.
So I guess one question that arises from that, or that was on my mind with, I guess, how does AI interfere with interact with, or get impacted by your different areas of work? So I know, obviously, for you doing compute for AI, it's directly related. But I guess in terms of privacy, for example, I know that there's many threats that did not, exist before, the types of attacks that people are now able to orchestrate. Like, if you want to speak to that from any of your perspectives.
I mean, exfiltration of data using AI agent is real. Everyone should be very wary about that, what they run on their computer. Obviously, I think most people here will agree or know this, but to come to your point of what it enables, I just want to double down on what I just said before. Please ask your agent to set a PGP key. That's it. I think you will feel, those who haven't tried it yet, it's natural that you're, a bit skeptical about it. But the models have, in the last year, this has just happened in the last year, have become so incredibly good that you can basically ask them almost anything that you can do on a computer, they can do for you. I'll make an example for infrastructure. For example, setting up a Lightning node has always been a pain in the ass. Ask your agent to set up a Lightning node. It's done in two minutes. So there are many things that you thought you cannot do, and you can do them right now. That's the thing that you should maybe take home with you. If you haven't tried it yet, please do.
I mean, most people are still using day-to-day, most systems that they're using are not fully respecting their privacy as much as they should be. Even though we've had, over a decade of GDPR and all these things that are supposed to be helping us as users have our privacy be respected. And on one hand, AI is going to make this a lot worse, I think. And it already is. Like, the data's there. It's more accessible. I mean, there's so many different ways you can slice it with AI, whether it's agents and whether it's using AI to help, exploit vulnerabilities, to access things, social, like taking advantage of people, phishing, social engineering, all of it. AI is just making everything faster at different speeds in different areas, but it's coming. And then, so that's scary. That's not good. We didn't really get privacy by design embedded in all of our core systems prior to this, but at the same time, all those problems will hopefully cause more action. So maybe people will start to realize that, okay, we didn't really feel the pain before because, oh, they just took all my data, but nobody took all my money or something. And but now if that advances faster, then maybe we'll all care more. Maybe the people who can impact this, where the different challenges need to be addressed, maybe they will. So I'm going to stay optimistic, but it sucks that things have to get worse before they get better.
That is, yeah, very optimistic and comforting way of framing that challenge. So, do you guys have any more thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to providing research-grade hardware or small microclusters at a local level, I think it's quite simple. There's no one in between a researcher and the hardware they're using to run their experiments, and I just think that means there's no like corporate interests that are in play, and like theoretically in the model weights of these running an open source model, there's no one watching what happens, and we're not even watching what's happening there. So.
In terms of AI privacy, as practical steps that you can do today is run local models. They're getting pretty good. You still need some expensive hardware for it, but it's very expected that this will change within the year or two. So local models are getting surprisingly good. There's also end-to-end encrypted models out there, providers that can prove to you in a secure enclave with an attestation that they cannot read the data that you send to them. So for sensitive applications, those might be a better option. But just the simplest thing that you can do today is to not use your credit card to pay for AI. Otherwise, your identity is directly linked to that account. So you can use ChatGPT or Claude or something like that if you make sure, I mean, you should always be wary of what you send to them, but at least don't use your credit card that is linked to your account if you can somehow manage that.
Important to keep in mind. Are you going to add something, or?
Yeah, okay.
Me too.
Yeah, one thought comes to mind. In fact, my neurosurgeon once said to me, he's seen hundreds of brains but never seen a thought. And in the same way, beware when the furniture starts talking back to you as to who they are owned by and what their agency is there for.
Well, looking at the time, if there's anything in particular that you guys want to add, and we can also take a question or so. If there's an important point that has not yet been highlighted from any of you. Yes.
Maybe to loop back on the beginning of our conversation. So I work on BitChat, which is a Bluetooth messenger. You can download it right now. It's perfect for a conference like this. You can talk to each other and chit talk about the panel, for example, without internet. To loop back to the layer concept that we brought, one of the biggest challenges that we have is range. But and this is also, addressing everyone here, is there are other protocols that can do mesh communication on a longer range, such as LoRa, MeshCore, Meshtastic, other technologies. So we think that the way to go is to marry them, similar to the, how we build layers in crypto, basically, is have something that works on the ground, on the street, in a city block, that is, for example, BitChat. Have something that works between the city blocks, between the cities, that might be MeshCore. Have something that maybe works between the countries, and that could be, I don't know, maybe some future satellite, open source satellite project that doesn't exist yet. So I hope we'll be able to, for communication, do something similar on a physical level that we have been doing on a digital level for many internet applications and protocols.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to jump in on this idea of like the physical level, or kind of what I do, like the social infrastructure level, really bringing people together. And I wanted to just share a little piece of lore that might be fun to the people here. Foresight co-founder Christine coined the term open source at an event, dissimilar to this one, but back in 1997, it used to be called free software before that, and they were having a really hard time having it gain traction. People didn't like the name free software because they thought, oh, it means it's going to be free. I don't want to develop a protocol. It's just going to be free for everybody. And she originally coined this term. It made a huge difference in how open software was supported and developed, and then here we are today. So many of us are building open source software and caring about it. And so I just wanted to kind of there's one thing I wanted to say is I think these kind of meetings and these kind of spaces are also really, really important important for all of this, because we get the interdisciplinary communication, because we actually meet somebody eye to eye that we wouldn't, because we can talk about these things. So that's close to my heart, but I just kind of wanted to shout that out there, is that we also should continue to prioritize events like this. And Beth, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I think when it comes to building the stack, I would want to add that there's been amazing advancements with cryptography and cryptographic protocol, different approaches with cryptography and cryptographic protocols that were theoretical in the past, very much in academia, and known that this could solve stuff, but now they're actually being implemented and applied to scenarios that can solve our problems. So we can look at things within the stack and see things from a completely different perspective now, and solve things, solve some of these problems that we saw that we had as challenges in the past. There's now new novel solutions for, and to me that's incredibly exciting. And I look forward to seeing these conversations at these events every year, as we start to see the dynamic shift and the paradigms that we have challenges of, they move because we have new tools at our disposal.
And if Adam can close us out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would also just want to support what the panelists have said so far, but I'd also support and want to suggest that people examine the existing infrastructure around them when deciding what to build. So, my particular interest involves the domain name system, but there are other projects as well to look at. There's a project that attempts to duplicate the existing internet in all its structures and forms. This is fascinating. It's no allegiance to the project, but it's called dn42.org, and it replicates all the governance structures as well as the technical one. And I think seeing models at that detail of both the human and the mechanical or the digital is very valuable when you're starting to think about designing new alternatives involving Meshtastic and other alternate forms of communication. So take a look and check these things out. Treat it with the seriosity that it deserves.
Awesome.
And play.
Yes, that's the most important part. So thank you guys. And since we didn't have time for Q&A, if you want to join us in the little workshop area that is speaker office hours, then some of us can head over there. If you don't know how to get there, it's like you turn out of this door, and then there's the workshop room area, which hopefully you visited to see Department of Decentralization Zone and stuff. And we'll be in the room 1 if you want to continue this conversation and chat with these awesome speakers. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the panel, and
Thank
thanks
you guys.
for the